In this video, we'll cover 5 mistakes that just about every beginner photographer makes.
It's totally fine if you're guilty of making any of these mistakes, but learning to fix these 5 things will help take your photography skills to the next level. And thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.
We've reviewed a lot of beginner photographer photos over the years, and by far, the number one problem we see is this: photos lacking visual interest or meaning. The main difference between beginner and seasoned photographers is that seasoned photographers take meaningful or visually striking images that tell stories, and beginners simply don't. The main reason for this is likely because beginners are in the early stages of learning their camera, learning what works and what doesn't, what looks good and what doesn't. But once you become comfortable with your gear, you have to be able to use it to capture interesting subject matter in ways that capture feelings or emotions, tell a deeper story, or stop viewers in their tracks. One has thought put into it, and one has very little to no thought put into it. It doesn't matter if you have a skilled model, a majestic landscape, or high-end gear. All that matters is how you use what you do have to tell a story or create captivating visual interest. For example, if you're just shooting a snapshot of your pet, it's okay to capture a candid slice-of-life photo. But if you want to take a photo that's more interesting to a wider audience, you'll have to use a few photography tools to do so. By using leading lines of light, rule of thirds, and negative space, we've created a more striking photo that immediately gives the viewer a clear focal point and is visually appealing. It also tells the story of a lazy summer afternoon.
Speaking of intention behind your images, another common mistake we see beginner photographers make is not having a discernible focal point in their photos. We often see a picture of a landscape that leaves us wondering, what is the subject of this photo? Is it this random tree? Is it this more random pond? What is this photographer even trying to say?
I don't understand what I'm looking at.
There are a few ways that you can direct your viewer's eyes to the subject in your images. The most common way is through the rules of composition. Perhaps the simplest way to compose your photo is by utilizing the rule of thirds. By choosing to place your subject in one of these 4 points, you're telling your viewer what's important in this photo. Obviously, there will be times you want to break this rule, and that's fine, but it's helpful to keep this in mind when starting out. Another good way is by utilizing color. The brightest part of the image is where the eye automatically drifts to. If the brightest or boldest part of your image is not part of your subject, it's going to be competing with it. Another key factor that literally highlights your focal point is light. In this photo, the light is highlighting this guy with his bike. If we didn't have that stream of light, you probably wouldn't know where we wanted you to look, maybe this restaurant or this red door. One other element you can implement is leading lines. Another reason why your eye is probably drawn to this bike is because the road has leading lines pointing you to it. Even the road itself has an arrow pointing you to it, though of course you don't have to be that literal with it. Here's another example. There are lines everywhere that point directly to our subject in this photo. As you may have noticed already, great photos often combine many of these techniques to create photos with strong focal points.
The main way that beginners get color wrong is by not considering it at all. For example, color can change the overall mood of the photo. It can cause distractions, or it can strengthen the image to create a captivating result. For portrait shoots, we consider our location and select an outfit that will work well in that situation to create the vibe we're after. When we have total control of the location and clothing choices, we can create whatever mood we want. If we want a bright and colorful summery look, our model wearing yellow against a light blue backdrop captures that vibe just right. When you don't have any control over the location or outfit, look for distractions you can crop out of your frame when shooting. Otherwise, you can remove distracting colors that aren't essential to the photo in post-production. We have a video on how to change the color of anything in Lightroom or remove objects completely in Photoshop, both of which we'll link below.
Along with not considering color, beginner photographers often don't consider lighting. Lighting is single-handedly the most important element to consider with photography, so put the odds in your favor by shooting when lighting conditions are favorable. When we photographed weddings and were shooting in a room with tungsten lighting mixed with daylight from the windows, we would turn off the tungsten lights to get even color temperature across our scene. When scouting for portrait locations, we look for areas with the best light, even if the backdrops aren't as ideal. This is how important nice lighting is for your photography. When we have control over the time of a shoot, we generally opt for times when the light is lower in the sky, like early morning or late afternoon. If you are shooting during the times of day when light is harsher, we also made a video on techniques you can use when working with harsh light, which we'll also link below.
Most commonly, beginner photographers will find an image they love on Instagram or wherever, and then attempt to recreate that look themselves. While this can be a fine way to learn some of the basics, if you really want to break out of your beginner shell and develop your own voice, look elsewhere for inspiration. For instance, we take a lot of inspiration from movies, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which inspired this shoot. And again, you don't have to be literal with your inspiration. It could be something as simple as a color palette or a composition that you then apply to your own photography. This is where you get to flex that creative muscle and let your imagination run wild. For example, our friend Abuka Morty did self-portraits with a drone. He was able to make some super creative portraits unlike anything we've seen photographers do with a drone before. Okay, ready? Now.
Squarespace!
All right, my first time making a website. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited. Let's do this. I'm already done making my website. Are you surprised? I am.
I'm really impressed with Squarespace's blogging tools. Yay.
Whoa, they've got email campaigns? I'm totally gonna send one.
That was totally worth it.
Look at all this traffic overview. It's all right here. A year ago, I didn't think I could have my own beautiful website, but Squarespace made it so easy. Thank you.
This year, give yourself the gift of your own beautiful website with Squarespace and save 10% when you use the code MangoStreet at checkout. Head to the link in our description to get started. Recap. 1. Create photos with intention that tell a story or are visually striking.
2. Ensure you have a clear focal point. Utilize composition, light, color, and leading lines to help.
3. Consider the impact color has on the mood and focus of your image.
4. Lighting is of the utmost importance. Don't overlook it.
5. Think outside the bun.
It's dumb.
Why do you always want to do stuff together? And then you always say that's dumb.
I like being next to you.
5. Think outside the bun.
Hey,
I think you said it was dumb.
it's fun.